The cycle ends in less than 200 days for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. We're looking at cycle analysis in today's video, applying multiple strategies, indicators, and looking at particular charts that may give us a leading edge on the market. It's happened before in the past. We'll use it again now and into 2025. And of course, continue to update the strategies and theories in case there are invalidations to them. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. You're with me, Jason Pizzino, at your home of macro cycle analysis. I'll be covering the real estate cycle in today's video, stock markets, commodities, as that's a big one for BTC and cryptocurrencies, to give us a feel on where the cycle is going, and of course, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Yesterday, you guys said you absolutely loved this video. The highest likes we've seen in a long time, maybe just because I had a outdoor backdrop and it was probably half the length. So let's aim for that again today. And if you want more on trading and investing full-time, part-time, join a group of active traders and investors for this bull run and the inevitable crash that will come, as we'll talk about in today's video. Okay, this is where we're at. Long and short of it, you guys should know this by now, the 18.6 year cycle. But if you are new here, stick around. This is the beast that has kept us on the right side of the market all the way from the lows. So we're looking at those cycle lows back in 2020 and in 2022 with that higher low. That was the period where everyone thought there would be a recession, and then they thought a recession in 2023. All the best analysts and so on, investors and whatnot around the globe. This has been on the right side of the market for a very long time, and I'm into my 13th year following along with the 18.6 year cycle. It's an average, and generally you see it between 17 and 23 years until we get to that extreme peak. We are in the winner's curse phase, this extreme peak, and after that point, I'm looking for a significant collapse. Remember, this is for US house prices and the economy, and myself being Australian, maybe you're watching from the UK, maybe you're watching from the US or Canada. The US tends to lead this cycle, and you start to see a flow-on effect from all of that extra liquidity into the rest of the markets out there. In particular, the risk assets like Bitcoin and crypto, which is what we're most interested here on the channel. After that point, it's like a leading indicator for us. Aussies, we get a nice leading indicator. I mean, I've said that before, but for our real estate market, we see what's happening in the US, and Australia tends to lag that by roughly 6 to 12 months from what we've seen with the data of the 18.6 year cycle over the last roughly 100 or so years. This cycle's been around for over 200 years, and I say that in terms of last 100 for Australia. Now, if you're from the UK, it works just as well. More on that later. Let's continue on with the rest of the cycle analysis. Bitcoin cryptos ending in 200 days. A quick recap of what's gone on with the economy and geopolitics and so on and so forth in the last 24 hours. We have seen the Bank of England drop their interest rates. So we saw Canada drop their interest rates, I believe it was last week or the week before. The US paused. Australia will be coming up soon. And as I said, we just saw Britain drop their interest rates. They're at 4.75. The forecast was 4.5, so it's what the market had anticipated. And they got it. They got their cut to 4.5%. But they're not doing as well as the US. The US has been doing far better than the rest of our developed nations. And we've seen that in their stock markets. Their stock markets have been hitting new all-time highs for over 12 months. We've been covering it here through all of the thick and the thin of it, yet the rest of us have been sort of struggling to hit those all-time highs. And when we do, we sort of drop back underneath those. And in a chart representation of that, here is the S&P 500. The long term, nothing has changed, obviously, in the last 24 hours. I wouldn't expect it to change in that period of time. The changing point is still below 5,100 points for the US. This is for the S&P 500. And look, we just go back down to the short-term timeframes here. It's all been relatively choppy, just between two trading ranges. So until we get a breakout or a breakdown, that would lead us to the next signal. If we did see a breakdown from here, I'm looking for support around 5,800 points, all the way down to roughly about 5,600 points. Now, there's been heaps of signals that have come up throughout this period. You guys have been following it on the channel. Hit the like if you have. You've seen it play out. The investors getting the most bearish at that low. We showed that data with the surveys from the AAII. Investors, the survey's been around for nearly 40 years. They were bearish at that low. The 13th, it was something. It's always something. We saw tariffs this week. We saw DeepSeek the week before. We saw whatever happens in leading into the inauguration. We saw something else the week before that, well, the few weeks before that. But each of these lows have basically been around a similar price and slightly higher. When you zoom out, take off all of the lines and noise there, that's all everyone's been worried about all the way up here. Look at where this thing has come from, COVID. That was supposed to be the end of the world. 2022 supposed to be the next end of the world, and then March 2023, the next end of the world. That was the banking collapse. And here we are. So this is essentially a bull market, wall of worry. Prices continue higher, even though day to day it seems like some of the the fear that's out there should tell us that, well, logically speaking, the market should have collapsed by now, but it hasn't. So here they're the price ranges there for the S&P 500. NASDAQ has been doing relatively the same thing, but slightly weaker, and I'm referencing that from the current top, which is also the all-time high. The S&P has been trading a little bit closer to that and a little bit further away from its 50% level, you can see here, which means obviously the NASDAQ is slightly weaker, but nonetheless, it's still in its trading range. It's still trading in that range within the all-time high phase there. So you can see it's above those previous tops. 50% level still intact, and then the lows there at 20,600. Nothing has changed there, and 19,900. In yesterday's video, there was a few comments that said you liked that. Great and to the point discussion. So I'm trying that out in today's video. It's going to the point. So if you're finding it a bit hard to follow along, hopefully not, stick around, like and subscribe, and it'll become far, far easier to get a grasp of what's actually happening in the market, as opposed, well, obviously in my opinion, as opposed to what's happening in the headlines and what people, well, analysts want us to believe for their own sake. I don't know, right? Anyway, you can read the comments and see how we've been going over the last 5 or so years here on the channel. Don't get everything right, but at the end of the day, as long as we're on the right side of the market earlier on, like we've been doing with Bitcoin and the stock markets, then hopefully you're continuing to trade on the right side of the market. Now, the Dow Jones, same sort of thing, but it's at slightly higher prices in the S&P 500. It's made up of different stocks to the S&P, not all different stocks, but several different stocks. And what I did just before this, looking at the overall cycle, some of the tech stocks haven't been as strong. So this is just from my analysis looking at the charts themselves. And just if I can, just a bit of a comment here, if you want to take it away for yourself, do some more research. In this stage of the cycle, generally, not always, but generally, you start to see banking stocks do relatively well. And this is talking about the US, and of course, you can see it in Australia, you can see it in the UK, as we're pretty big financial economies here. The US, go through those 8 or so top banks, many of them in all-time highs, and they've just been straight up for, from sort of 2023 or 2024, actually, which is relatively strong. Some tech stocks have been hitting new all-time highs, but they're in a bit of a trading range around their all-time highs. And, like Tesla, it broke through $200. I thought that had further to go to the downside, but it went up to around 400 or 480, right? But it's dropped back underneath the previous all-time high. So it could be in a large distribution pattern, could still go from $300 to $500 again, back down to 300. It's got some volatility there because it's a pretty retail loves that stock. But just keep an eye on where those previous highs were. I'm getting sidetracked on that. Is really just a comment about where this cycle is going and how you're seeing the strength in some of these stock markets, some of these indices that are slightly stronger than others, and how that is possible. Of course, S&P 500, more banking stocks, whereas of course the NASDAQ does not. It's mostly tech stocks, so it's slightly weaker there. Doesn't mean that the game is over yet. It just means you're seeing a shift in different sectors. Hopefully that makes some sense to you, and you're able to use that so you can understand where the markets are going, as opposed to all the noise that we hear coming out of everywhere else, right? So I take this a little bit further. These are the indices. Now, another interesting point with the end of this cycle here, and we start to, signs that we are seeing more of the money flow out, and of course into BTC, and then, back to the point of how much longer it has to go in this cycle. We also see commodities generally at this stage head up, provided we are in the uptrend or the upswing of the commodity cycle too, which we are. So the commodity cycle is in an uptrend. It doesn't mean that everything goes up every single day all together, but they all have their turns. And you can see here, the latest one that's going to hit headlines if it hasn't already is coffee. So if you're a coffee drinker, coffee prices have likely, well, I've seen them go up. Maybe you've seen them go up too. It's pretty crazy how expensive they are. But we're seeing all-time high prices for coffee over the last, well, yeah, what's that, 50 years. You got 1977. The data goes back to 1973. Call it over 50 years if you wish. But that's pretty strong prices here. And I think this chart here shows Bitcoin versus coffee. And I made a joke about this on X. If you want my X and my new Instagram, actually, I only have one Instagram now. It's right here in the video description. Don't get scammed out there. If you want to follow, use the official links only. Do not listen to anyone DMing you about anything financial related. I can leave it at that. X is down here. So coffee has been booming. Bitcoin obviously has been tracking sideways. And the joke I made was we should have been stacking beans, not sats, over this last, roughly 12-month period. That's where Bitcoin topped out here in March of 2024. Of course, we've seen a higher high on that, around 108,000 or 109,000 for BTC. But coffee has actually been stronger in that period, just booming here from 140 to 400 in the last few months. It's in all-time high territory. It could keep going, squish this chart, just boom. But you're in this sort of, last leg here. You're seeing commodity prices rise, which is, to me, is another sign of this winner's curse phase, or maybe it could be part of inflation. I don't know, right? You're seeing higher and higher prices with commodities. And yes, you could lay it down to whatever the news tells you. Oh, maybe there was a crop that got destroyed. Maybe the weather wasn't too good. Any number of things. The point is the chart has been up, and it's been a pretty strong run since October. So that's October 2023. So if the news wasn't telling you it then and it's telling you now, probably got to take it with a grain of salt to see what the hell is going on here. So commodities are up, canary in the coal mine stuff, leading indicators here. We're still seeing the cycle continue on. So I wanted to give you that bit of good news, or a lot of good news at the beginning of the video before I get to that, 200 days or so left. Here is the overall cycle. So here is the long-term cycles. I've got roughly 1,100 days here to the peak, and it's just looking at what's happened in each of the other cycles. Last cycles have been nearly 1,100 days. That was the 2021 top, the 2017 top. Almost to the day, it was again nearly 1,100 days. That 1068 or 1061 or 1080, right? It's a pretty consistent number there. And then going back to the 2013 cycle, 1150, so 1,150 days. So we could be 200 or 300 days from the end of the cycle. I've obviously titled the video 197 or under 200 days until the end, and I've done that to give us our first roadmap target. Things can change; they will always change, and I say, well, I don't have the answers. No one has the answers. We just have to continue to follow the charts and see whether we get any indications of continued uptrend. So that's to go with our theory, or if there are any invalidations, because you can't just pick something and believe it must happen that way, because I don't control these charts, markets, you don't control the markets, therefore anything can happen. We're just trying to play and trade with the probabilities. And so I'm looking at 200 days. Let's have a look at where that could end up. And I've got one more thing. It's not just this chart. Everyone can throw this chart out day and night. Oh, look, the last 3 cycles did 1,100 days. Therefore, we have 200 to 300 days to go. Yes, that is also the chance, possibility. But we're also starting to see it wear off in other markets. Doesn't mean we can't go higher. And I've got ETH, Solana, potentially DOGE, XRP to look at as well. And I'll look at SUI at the end of the video. But where were those alts within 200 days of their top? Was there still potential for another boom, big altcoin season, right? That's what I want to dive into with you as well. So here's the first thing. That's your end of your cycle. Most people probably have seen this by now. If you are new to crypto or Bitcoin, you may not have seen this. And that's generally what people are referencing when they look at how many days are left in the cycle. So yeah, we're at now 799 from the low. This bull market has been going for over 2 years. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It is over 2 years old. The bull market did not start in March 2024. It did not start in November 2024 when it broke out of those tops. It started at the bottom and it finishes at the top. To me, that's the easiest way to objectively identify a trend, a low and a high. What I have also seen is people talk about, well, this is where the bull market starts. It starts when it breaks through the previous all-time high. That's a different phase of the bull market. That's when more retail picks up interest. You possibly have seen that yourself. Retail is not interested at these lows, or dumb money, whatever floats your boat, whatever you want to call it, right? Most people are not interested in the market at the lows or the breakout. They think it's not possible. Then it breaks out again and again and again, just like it is now. We're seeing a drop off in interest as well. We saw that with some of the metrics that I've been showing on the channel here over the last few weeks, the liquidation levels and the search volume. Fear and greed also another big one. But to continue with the point of the 200 or 300 days left, it's been over 2 years. Now, what has recently changed in the last 24 hours is MicroStrategy rebranding to Strategy and adopts a Bitcoin logo. Great. This is going to help us with our next point. Just so that we know if it's referenced MicroStrategy or Strategy or MSTR, the same thing. It's just the MicroStrategy ticker, MSTR. If they change this ticker, so be it. But it's the same data. So MicroStrategy peaked last cycle in February of 2021. Bitcoin peaked in November of 2021. That gave us a period of about 273 days. So I'm very, very interested to see whether this cycle repeats, rhymes similar to the last time, because MicroStrategy was unable to put in a new all-time high throughout that 9 months from its top to Bitcoin's top. And that has to do with how Saylor has structured the stock and how it buys Bitcoin, issues bonds. Investors can sell off their bonds to buy stock, to sell stock, to cash out on their BTC and that sort of thing. So it's pretty genius in how it's done, but that doesn't mean just because Bitcoin hits a new all-time high that MicroStrategy also needs to hit a new all-time high, which then, at least in my theory, and yes, we only have one cycle to look at. We've got the start of a second cycle to look at, which is playing out similarly to last time, so it's almost rhyming, that it can give us an early warning as to potentially how much longer the cycle has left, and if we are in fact into that, that final phase for Bitcoin and cryptos. So this is just looking at timing here. That was 9 months. So 9 months from the November top. If we have to assume here, unfortunately, makes an ass out of you and me, but we don't know what happens on this black side of the chart. We're just assuming, using that peak, because that's so far the MicroStrategy all-time high price of $543, 9 months from that November date takes you out into August of 2025. So Q3 of 2025 for some sort of maybe Bitcoin peak, maybe altcoin peak as well. So everyone's looking for that next question. When's alt season? When's alt season going to happen? The longer you go through this cycle, I don't want to say stupider, but the less, it just sounds like noise to think that you keep asking, we all keep asking the question, when's altcoin season going to happen? It's literally just play the alts and rotate in and out of them and take the profits. So far throughout this cycle, it hasn't played out like last cycles where everything booms and busts together. We're getting multiple different sectors taking off and then dying out, which is a great cycle for traders, but not so great for anyone who wants to hold and run it up, just hold for 12 months or 18 or 24 months, whatever it might be, and then sell out, right? It's not that clear as it has been in the previous cycles, like 2017 being the ICOs, 2021 being metaverse or NFTs or gaming or whatever it was in 2021, right? So slightly sidetracked again, but looking here at the end of the cycle, we have from this point about 197 days left to that exact date. So it's 196. Of course, MicroStrategy doesn't trade on the weekend, so give or take a day there. This chart shows it a little clearer, where you got 197, takes you out to roughly end of August, mid to end of August, and the 270 odd days from that February peak, the November peak. You can see MicroStrategy here put in lower highs this entire time, while Bitcoin's been putting in higher highs. And this makes it a little bit clearer to see. So we put on MicroStrategy, and you can see the white bar chart in the background is basically MicroStrategy's tops, was MicroStrategy's prices, and Bitcoin's prices are in the colored bars. So Bitcoin has been making new highs at each of these points, where, however, MicroStrategy has been putting in lower highs. So at the moment, this particular theory that I'm looking at is that MicroStrategy could be that bit of a canary in the coal mine to give us the countdown timer towards the end. Is it going to repeat exactly the same or similarly? I don't know. At the moment, it has been working out relatively well. If we're 80 days into this top, where was MicroStrategy last time? So let's see if it's been doing something similar. So here is the peak, and let's count 80 days from that top. That takes us out to somewhere here on the white bars. So you can see the white bars. They've had a couple of peaks, but it almost looks exactly the same as to what happened last time. You can see it peaked out, put in a lower high, put in a lower high. Yeah, you had the April top here. It peaked out again, but then died off very, very quickly. It was a really, really big reversal. So that April did take out the top, but it reversed. So it was a slightly higher high. Okay, you win, but it failed within 1 day. So call it an equal top, and then it basically crashed from that point. The next interesting thing from this countdown timer is where were altcoins throughout this period. But before I get to that, just hit the like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of this, or if you're enjoying this type of content. Am I getting to the point? You let me know down below. I want to just finish off with Bitcoin before I get over to altcoins, looking at the short term and the long term here. So bear with it, jump around from the short to the long term again if you can manage to balance those thoughts out in your own mind. The short term, I've got my fib extension on the chart here, looking at the double top that's currently in play. This is what I posted on X, but just to explain it in a little more detail here for you while you're watching. Looking at double tops and then projecting price targets if this signal plays out, brings us to 100% target being around 90,000, and then the 150% target being around 80,700. Why do we look at 150 off a double top? Well, essentially, that's what has been shown over the course of history, over 100 years, to be a high chance, not a 100% guarantee, but there is a high chance of the double top hitting that price target. The other beautiful thing about this is that it comes in not exactly dead on, but it comes in relatively close, within 3.5% of the 50% level of that extension. And actually, if I don't use that one, I use this one, which is actually far more accurate because we're using the range now. Now that comes in at 79.28. So forget the 78, look at the 79,300, and that's even closer because now that's the halfway point of the range, and that takes you within 2%. So it's a good price cluster there should this market crash, and it will be a crash. If that happens, it'll feel like it anyway. Down to that $78,000 to $81,000, it'd be a good place to reset, if it gets there, of course. And then we work our way higher, so on and so forth. So in terms of the short term, this is still in play because the top has not been taken out. The 108, 109 top hasn't been taken out. So we have to keep it there. We can't ignore it. Ignoring it would be absolutely stupid. So keep that in mind. If you want to go through and have a look at those double tops again, very, very significant double tops play out to 150%. People love this as a double top, and you'll easily see that it's happened before. So there's your top there as well, 50%, 100%, dead on there. You can look at that, how it just touched it, bounced, and then continued to crash. And then almost, it's 900 bucks off, got to that 150%. But that's over a very, very large reference range there, all right? And I could even take it back to this little double top into the COVID dump. So this is just back testing the rule very quickly for you here on the channel. And look at this, up to the, where's the 50%? There it is. That's your, look at that beautiful double top. That's so balanced. Hit 50% and then failed, went straight through, hit 150, smashed it. Yeah, you'll say, well, it was COVID. Yeah, okay. But if you're trading it, you're in it before COVID. So that's the beauty about it. So anyway, I'm looking at this and there is a chance that we do hit 78 to 81. Personally, I think there's a higher chance, but I don't want to scare anyone here because that's the shorter term, and I still think we recover from that point because it's above all the previous tops. Longer term, back to the longer term here, you got the Elliott wave also looking pretty healthy. This is Michael's Elliott wave theory. We're into somewhere around here. Now look, this could then have to drop to that high there. So we might be in this one, and then it might dump and move higher. It still remains intact. It still remains in a very similar structure to this, with a play at a wave 4 low and recovery into 5 of 5 of 5 of 5, which is basically a massive, massive move to the upside. So that's the longer term. Short term, still no decision of up or down yet because it's in a trading range for the last nearly 3 months. No one can confirm either up or down because it's in a trading range. But longer term is still in a macro uptrend. The total market cap, over to the altcoins now, and taking a look at just the 200-day end of cycle here. The structure, not as strong as Bitcoin. It is still heading a little bit lower. Does it have to get down to that point for BTC? It doesn't, of course, but of course I'm watching it on the chart in case. And we still have some support here around 3 trillion. Now, if we start to bounce and close back above the 50% level, same thing for BTC, back above roughly 99, 100K, then there's less chance that we hit that 80. So there's your good news for the bull onlys, right? But the 200 days here, where was the total crypto market cap 200 days before the top? Well, it was basically peaking out itself and it had its correction to go. We might be in that correction now. So what else is left? Well, maybe a little more of the correction, but there is still one leg to the upside, one significant leg broken into 2 parts. That's the total cryptocurrency market cap. So the too long didn't read. Looks like there is still one more move to go just based on the previous cycle. 200 days for the cycle before that. Well, that's pretty obvious. You still had a pretty significant boom there. Let's move this down and have a look at 200 days. Well, you had a pretty strong move, big correction, and then a massive, ridiculous move. Another correction and then a top there. So still a fair bit of work to do to get into that peak. And then we got the altcoins, ETH, Solana, etc. But I just want to quickly get through USDT because we're coming up to that 50% level again. Really just an update here. It hasn't broken through 4.6 and it's starting to just die out here. If this breaks above 4.6, 4.8, expect that correction to happen for BTC and then see what happens from there, whether we do get a rejection at 5.2 that then dumps, that would dump the market. And if the USDT then gets rejected and dumps down, well then you'd see all that money, I think, flow back into Bitcoin and crypto. So that would be your scare out. Where's my button here? Scare out and then a quick reversal. Okay, so ETH, Solana, XRP, Doge. Now let's just quickly have a look here because for these guys over the last couple of days, basically all the same chart here in the short term, dump, and then they haven't really gone anywhere. Some have died off a little bit from here, but nothing has really maintained or closed above significant levels. So 200 days from the previous top, getting over to what we're talking about here with the total crypto market cap, similar sort of thing. It had its peak, had its dump, and then really the big move that was left in that 200 days was broken into 2 parts with a significant correction along the way. So that is also in play. And then 200 days in the previous cycle, this one's quite interesting actually, because you still had a long period of sideways consolidation and then one final boom towards the end. And that final boom, at least in the case of Ethereum, was not very long, depending on where you want to measure it from. Do I want to measure it from the low here in November? That's basically just a month, or 2 months, sorry. 2 months into that peak. If you want to measure it from that all-time high or when it started to break out again, then slightly less, about 40 or 50 days to the top. If you want to measure it from the retest and then the breakout, so let's measure it from the breakout to the top, you have about 30 days. So somewhere from 1 to 2 months after that long consolidation. And so if ETH is doing that again, which it has been known to do, just consolidate, 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 and then give you 1 or 2 months at the end of the move, that is also the possibility here. The main thing with both of them, right? There's always a left, right, up, down, sideways scenario, but in each of the cases for Ethereum and for the total market cap, we have still seen a decent boom. 2021, not a huge boom. You're just going from like 1,700 to 4,800, pretty decent. But the boom in 2017 really did take you from about $300 to $1,400. So a much better end move. Now, most of the gains had been had already. So we're in that final stage. That's why I was reminding you about BTC and being in the end of the cycle. It seems like most of the gains already, Bitcoin's down 500%. I think it's unlikely that Bitcoin would do another 500% from $100,000. That would take you to, what, $500,000 or $600,000. So yeah, I'm not looking for any of those targets. I'm definitely now moving things to be a lot more conservative. Same deal for ETH here, and as long as it remains under here for much, much longer, I don't think it's going to get anything crazy. Like I don't think we're going to see any sort of like $12,000, $15,000 ETH, $20,000 ETH. I think that's pretty much off the cards. I think we'll be lucky if we get into the high single digits here between sort of $8,000 and $10,000. So yeah, that's my dire look on more gains for Ethereum. Solana, 200 days out from the top. Again, big move. It actually had a huge move. It was still a 10x. Look back down here from $20 odd, $26 to 260. But when you look at it from earlier days, you had 50 cents. That was back at the lows. To that peak was $50. There's a 100x. So it's gone from a 100x to a 10x. Still big gains, but obviously not like what happened earlier on. So hopefully that answers that question as well about the alt season. There might still be more alt seasons. It might possibly still going to be rotated between different sectors, but I'm not anticipating that we get similar moves to what we've already seen over the last 12 to 24 months, unless it's new altcoins to a narrative that is already absolutely on fire at the time when that energy and excitement comes back from retail, which we've also looked at in previous videos. So another reminder to like and subscribe. If you want to be with active traders and investors, TIA Premium, place to go. Or if you want to get the free crypto report, just feel it out for a little bit longer. There is tiacrypto.com for the report. So just subscribe down there. Crypto debit cards while I'm here, and $30,000 for bonuses there. That's with Bybit. And then we also have a $100,000 bonus going on with Bluffin. So they're crypto exchanges. You want to learn how to trade, they're the places to go as well. Now, let's finish off with Solana, Sui, XRP, and Doge. We've looked at the 200 days out from a top, possibility of further downside, and then another significant move. I'll leave Sui because it wasn't around in the previous cycle, and I'll have a look at XRP. I think XRP still has a pretty long, well, it's got time to go to the upside, and this is the period that I've been showing you guys on most videos now for several months. Even though I'm not, in the XRP army, I couldn't care less. I said the entire time that I think XRP has until about June, July of 2025 to go into a peak. So about let's go to quarter three, because of previous moves that it has done, even back in its very, very early and strong cycles. It has this sort of 1 year period from significant low to its final top. So that was 52 weeks. I'm on a weekly chart, 57 weeks from the March collapse, so the COVID collapse, to the March 2021 top or April top. That's 57. You had 56 weeks here. So this is basically looking at entire cycles until the XRP army gets absolutely killed and they don't have any more energy left. They'll talk a big game, but the chart is doing the biggest talking and they won't have any energy left. Look, it could go, if it goes further, great. XRP army, you're back in force and you're doing what you do best. 56 weeks was the previous one. So we have 1, 2, 3 cycles to look at. Now I'm timing this out to 52 weeks here, but as we've looked at, it could go to 57. So where does 57 go? brings you into August. And what have we just looked at with BTC into that end of the cycle here? Lining this up with the overall cycle and also with MicroStrategy as a potential leading indicator here. Well, that takes us out to the end of August. So I've given you heaps of cycle analysis to show that, look, maybe there is 200 days, maybe there's longer. No one knows for sure. But in all of the previous years, and this is using as much data as we have for some of the longest cryptocurrencies, ETH, XRP, and Bitcoin, a lot of them are sort of coming out towards that Q3. Now, if you just switched off from here, that sucks, because I'm saying I'm not married to this option either. I am strongly watching it, but it doesn't mean I have to be married to it and this is the only thing that happens. If it gets to that point in Q3, so how I would actively use this, how do I use it with my own trading investing, is if we got to that time frame and more signs were showing up that it was becoming clearer and more evident that the cycle was ending, then I could apply this as well and say, well, in over 15, 16 years of history, it's highly possible that we do come to an end around that point because of the cycle data that we're looking at. Now, if I start to exit my positions at that point, great. I hope that we see a lot of hype at that time, because that would also add to my exit signals that I'd be getting out in a lot of that hype. And at that time, you would definitely be hearing people saying, "You're stupid. It's going to happen like last time. It's got to go till Q4, or maybe it goes into 2026, or maybe we see a super cycle, or maybe this thing's never coming down." So I think that is a big one to watch leading into Q3. We did see the turnaround here in late Q4, early Q1. That was something that we're looking at in 2024, you might remember. I thought maybe we could see a top here. Look, it is a top at the moment. There is a definite all-time high top for Bitcoin right now in Q1. So far, I don't think it's over, based on what I also talked about earlier in the video with the macro cycle, more money coming into stocks, which we also looked at, the stock markets here. Commodities also doing relatively strong. So that means, to me, I think there's still more to come, but I'm very interested now in terms of leading into this end stage. If it is 7-ish months, that's going to be pretty interesting to watch coming into Q3. Now, I did say I had DOGE and SUI. DOGE, similar thing, except it basically dumped for that last 7 months. You had one quick pump, but it was very highly emotional with Elon Musk, of course. So that came in at the Saturday Night Live top of May, whereas the rest of the markets all topped around September to November. And SUI obviously doesn't have that data there for 200 days, but SUI is one that seems to be shaping up relatively strong. Yeah, it could go further down, but it's still above all the previous tops here at $2.20-ish, still above 50% levels. And it seems like it's only done 2 relatively big moves so far. That's 1, and that's 2. And if we still have that time left, maybe we still see a nice big move leading into Q3, maybe Q4, I don't know. But I'm going to be watching it into that point. Let's draw a line just for some shits and giggles. Maybe we do hit $10, and that takes us out to a 5x from these lows here at 240. Over $10, $12, maybe you hit your 5x, because this move was already a 10x. And this move here from whatever it was, 30 odd cents to something, was still just under a 10x as well. So SUI, I think, still has some reasonable potential here. So does the Bitcoin and crypto cycle have less than 200 days to go? Maybe I've shown you enough information here to at least help you identify that time frame, identify where the roadmap is going. And should we see further signals of a top, you're then able to take action based on some of the information I've presented with you here today. Like, subscribe. I'll see you guys back here at the next video. Hopefully I won't look as tired in future videos, as I just finished up a 3-day wedding with Ravi Sharma from Search Property. You might know him from YouTube as well. Absolutely fantastic guy, fantastic couple. So yeah, looking a little bit fresher. Have a fantastic night, weekend, and I'll see you back here at the next video. Till then, take care. Peace out.